Every day, we hear about the economy, how it's doing, where it's heading, and whether we should be worried. But buried beneath all the headlines and technical jargon is a simple truth. Most of us don't actually know how this giant system works. We know how it feels when things are good, and we definitely know how it feels when they aren't. But the mechanisms behind those feelings often stay hidden. Today, we're going to change that. We're going to take one of the most misunderstood concepts in economics recession and break it down piece by piece. What it really means, how it unfolds, why it keeps happening, and why it might not be the monster everyone thinks it is. And by the end of this video, you won't just understand recessions. You'll see the entire economic system with a new kind of clarity, one that removes the confusion, the fear, and the mystery behind one of the most important forces shaping our lives. So let's take a deep breath and walk straight into the heart of the economic cycle. Recessions are one of those things everyone has heard about, but very few people truly understand. Every couple of years, the news starts flashing red banners. People panic, markets tumble, and suddenly the word recession becomes the villain of the global economy. But what actually is a recession? Why does it happen? And why does it seem to show up again and again, almost like clockwork? To answer that, let's slow everything down. Let's peel back the layers of this giant machine we call the economy, because once you see how the pieces fit together, recession stops feeling like a mysterious monster hiding in the dark and starts looking like something much more predictable. Something natural. Something that, strangely enough, might even be necessary. Let's begin with a simple idea. Imagine the economy as a giant living organism. It breathes, it grows, it slows down, and sometimes it gets sick. A recession is one of those moments when the organism isn't functioning at full health. It's not dying, it's not collapsing, it's simply weakening, contracting, pulling back. The system loses momentum, and that slowdown spreads through every corner of society. But what does that slowdown actually look like? Let's bring it closer to daily life. Imagine walking into a shopping mall on a weekend. Usually it's buzzing with people, kids running around stores, playing loud music, long lines at the food court. Now imagine walking in and suddenly noticing something different. Fewer shoppers, stores half empty, sales signs everywhere, employees standing at the counter with nothing to do. That's recession at eye level. It's the economy whispering, people aren't spending like they used to. Now scale that idea up. People buy less. Businesses earn less. They begin to cut costs. Some freeze hiring. Others reduce hours. Some let workers go entirely. Those workers now have less income, which means even less spending. And suddenly you start seeing the outline of a loop. Less spending leads to less production, which leads to fewer jobs, which leads to even less spending. It becomes a downward spiral feeding itself cycle after cycle until something intervenes to stop it. But before we go deeper into that spiral, we need to clear up one thing. What exactly counts as a recession? Economists love technical definitions, but let's keep this simple. A recession is a period when economic activity shrinks across the board. Things aren't just slowing down in one sector or one city. They slow down everywhere. Growth turns into decline. Movement turns into stillness. And when this decline lasts long enough and becomes deep enough, we label it a recession. Now, if recessions are so painful, why do they keep happening? Why can't we just avoid them? Why can't governments and banks and smart economists just press the right buttons and keep everything running smoothly forever? That question takes us to the heart of how an economy truly works. And to understand it, let's imagine a row of dominoes. Each domino represents a part of the economic system: consumers, businesses, banks, investors, governments. When one domino starts to wobble, the rest follow. Not instantly, not dramatically, but gradually and predictably. The first domino often begins with prices. When prices rise too quickly, people get squeezed. They hesitate to buy. They postpone big purchases. The cost of living goes up faster than their salaries. Suddenly, everything feels heavier. That's inflation. And when it spirals out of control, it puts enormous pressure on the whole system. Now, imagine the second domino: interest rates. When inflation rises, central banks usually respond by increasing interest rates. This is like turning up the difficulty setting for borrowing money. Mortgages become expensive. Car loans become expensive. Business loans become expensive. And when borrowing costs rise, everything slows down. Housing markets cool. Investors pull back. Small businesses scale down expansion plans. People buy fewer things on credit. And now, the third domino bubbles. When an asset like housing or stocks becomes too popular, prices rise higher and higher, often far above what they're actually worth. Eventually, someone looks around and says, "Wait, why are we paying so much for this?" Then confidence cracks. People rush to sell, and the bubble bursts. History has shown this pattern over and over, from the dot-com bubble to the housing crash of 2008. Then there are the unpredictable dominoes, things no one can easily forecast. A pandemic that shuts down entire countries. A war that disrupts global trade. A natural disaster that breaks supply chains. When the unexpected hits, it can jolt the economic system hard enough to push it into recession almost overnight. But here's the deeper truth underneath all these causes. A recession isn't usually triggered by just one domino. It's the sequence, it's the chain reaction. It's the gradual buildup of imbalances that eventually become impossible to ignore. Economies don't fall apart because of one bad thing. They fall apart because many small stresses accumulate until the system can't support them anymore. To understand how a recession unfolds step by step, imagine the economy going through a series of stages. First, something weakens demand. People buy less. Second, businesses feel the impact. They earn less and cut back. Third, workers suffer through layoffs or reduced hours. Fourth, those workers reduce their spending. And fifth, the cycle repeats, reinforcing itself until something breaks the loop. It's like a feedback loop in a sound system. Once the microphone picks up its own output from the speaker, the sound grows louder and louder until correction kicks in. A recession is the economy amplifying its own weaknesses. So, what stops a recession? Who actually steps in to fight it? Enter the central bank and the government. Think of them as the doctors of the economic body. When the patient gets too hot, they cool things down. When the patient gets too cold, they warm things back up. In a recession, cooling isn't the problem. Warming is, so they lower interest rates to encourage borrowing and investment. They inject money into the financial system to increase liquidity. They increase government spending on infrastructure, healthcare, public projects, anything that puts money into people's pockets and creates jobs. They sometimes even send direct checks to citizens, giving people immediate spending power without requiring them to borrow or work more. Some of these tools work quickly. Others take time. But the goal is always the same: reverse the downward spiral. Turn less spending into more spending. Turn layoffs into hiring. Turn shrinking into growing. But here's the twist, the part most people never hear about. Recessions, as painful as they are, play a strange and important role in the economy. They act like the reset button. During long periods of growth, the economy builds up excess. Weak businesses survive longer than they should. Bad investments accumulate. Prices drift far above real value. The system becomes stretched, overheated, unsustainable. A recession cleans out the excess. It forces weak businesses to restructure or close. It corrects overpriced markets. It encourages companies to become more efficient. It resets expectations. And after this painful cleansing phase, something remarkable usually happens. The economy begins to grow again, often stronger than before. It might feel counterintuitive, even cruel, but recessions create the conditions for the next expansion. They're not the end of the story. They're a chapter break, a pause in the cycle, a moment of recalibration. To put it simply, you can't have endless growth without periods of contraction. Just like you can't breathe in forever. Sooner or later, you have to breathe out. So the next time you hear the word recession, try not to imagine it as a disaster movie where everything explodes. Instead, imagine it as a natural part of the system, an adjustment phase built into the structure of the economy. Sometimes it's triggered by mistakes, sometimes by excessive optimism, sometimes by unexpected shocks. But always it follows the same logic. The system slows down, resets, and prepares for the next climb. Understanding recession doesn't make it less painful, but it makes it less mysterious. And once you understand it, you stop being afraid of the word itself. You start seeing patterns instead of chaos. You start noticing how the dominoes fall. You recognize the loop. You understand the signals. And in a world fueled by uncertainty, understanding is one of the most powerful tools you can have. Recession isn't the end. It's part of the cycle. A moment of recalibration in a machine that never truly stops. It's the economy breathing out, gathering strength for the next breath in. And once you see it that way, the whole story starts to make a lot more sense. If you've made it this far, you now understand recession in a way most people never do. You've seen how the dominoes fall, how the loops reinforce themselves, and how the system resets. But more importantly, you've seen that recession isn't just a random crisis. It's a pattern, a rhythm, a natural pause in an economy that can't grow forever. Understanding the cycle doesn't erase the challenges that recessions bring, but it gives you perspective. It lets you navigate uncertainty with more confidence instead of fear. You start noticing the signals. You see the logic behind the chaos. And suddenly the world around you becomes a lot less confusing. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want more plain, clear explanations about the systems that shape our lives, make sure to join me for the next video. Because the more we understand about how the world works, the better decisions we can make inside it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.